She vanished without a trace. One icy night in Aspen Ridge, a decorated K-9 officer and her loyal dog disappeared. No calls, no clues, no hope. While the whole town slept, a battle for life and truth was unfolding deep in the winter woods, unseen, unheard, unimagined. Until one broken, bleeding dog appeared at the door of the last man she could trust. Ethan Walker, a widowed police chief haunted by loss, forced to risk everything for a partner he thought he'd lost forever. What happened next will test your faith in loyalty,
Don't
love,
worry,
and the
I'm
miracle
here.
bond between
We'll
humans
get
and
you
dogs.
out of this.
Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you believe in second chances, if you believe every animal and every person deserves hope, hit subscribe, because the story you're about to hear will change the way you see courage forever. The first real snow of December swept through Aspen Ridge, Colorado, like a forgotten hymn from another age. Long after midnight, the storm fell in thick, relentless veils, turning every lighted window into a faint golden lantern and every street into an uncharted road. The small mountain town population, barely 2,000, was quiet even on ordinary nights. But in the hush of this blizzard, Aspen Ridge felt as if the world had ended, and only ghosts remained. Inside a low, timbered house on Willow Creek Road, the Walker family was huddled for warmth. Ethan Walker, the town's police chief, stood by the living room window, broad-shouldered and a little stooped, his sandy hair peppered with gray, a faded scar along his right jaw. He was 45, a widower for nearly 4 years, and the sadness in his eyes rarely lifted except when he looked at his daughter. Ethan's hands were strong ex-military, strong but gentle, and his voice was the steady, calm baritone that had calmed many a frightened neighbor or a drunken brawler in the bar. Tonight, though, even Ethan's patience was running thin as the wind howled outside. On the couch nearby, Maddie Walker, his daughter, sat cross-legged, bundled in a faded blue blanket with cartoon owls. At 8 years old, Maddie was slight and pale, with a tumble of light brown hair, wide blue eyes, and a quick, nervous intelligence that sometimes made her seem older than she was. She clutched a worn, stuffed rabbit, a last, stubborn relic of the days before her mother died. The house itself was old but well kept, logs darkened by years of storms, the walls hung with old family photos and Ethan's police medals. Maddie's drawings pinned to the fridge added a splash of color against the gloom. Outside, the world vanished in white chaos. A sudden, frantic pounding on the front door shattered the quiet. Not the brisk, confident knock of a neighbor, nor the hesitant tap of a lost traveler. This was desperate, urgent, almost animal. Ethan's instincts kicked in. He reached for his flashlight and slid a hand to the pistol tucked at his waist, a habit he had never lost since his military days. "Stay back," he told Maddie softly, moving toward the door. The wind howled in as he opened it, and for a moment he saw nothing but snow and night. Then, a dark shape staggered forward, collapsing just across the threshold. A dog, big and battered, its fur streaked with blood and ice. Ethan crouched quickly, shining his light on the animal. "It's okay, boy. It's okay." The dog, clearly a German shepherd, black and tan, with a pronounced old scar along his right flank, lifted his head. The animal's amber eyes met Ethan's, and for a moment the man felt something almost like recognition. The dog was big, at least 90 pounds, but emaciated, his ribs sharp under filthy fur. Blood matted his shoulder and back leg. There was something unmistakable about him, the air of a working dog, even a soldier. Maddie hovered at the edge of the room, wide-eyed. "Daddy, is he going to die?" she whispered. Ethan shook his head, though he wasn't sure. He quickly checked the dog's pulse and breathing strong enough, but fading. He scanned the collar, battered, with a city-issue K-9 tag, and here Ethan's heart nearly stopped, a brass nameplate, barely legible beneath blood and grime. Shadow. The name sent a jolt through him. He remembered the stories. Rebecca Lane's legendary German shepherd, the pride of the department, a dog known for saving lives in blizzard rescues and hunting down missing hikers. Rebecca had named him herself because, as she'd once joked, "He's always at my heels, even when the world goes dark." Rebecca Lane. The name hurt. She had been Ethan's closest colleague, a woman of 40, tall and athletic, with a severe ponytail and a gaze that could freeze a barroom brawl. Her sense of humor was sharp as ice, but she'd loved her dog, and she'd been fiercely loyal to everyone in town. 3 days ago, she'd gone missing during a late patrol near the old mining road. There had been no sign of her until now. "Shadow," Ethan murmured, stroking the dog's head gently. The shepherd's ear twitched. Even in pain, the animal pressed closer, as if he'd been looking for Ethan all along. Maddie crept closer, her eyes huge. "He's not a bad dog. I remember him. He came to our school once. He did tricks and found my backpack." Ethan smiled faintly. "He's the bravest dog in Aspen Ridge. Or was." He moved quickly, fetching towels and the old first aid kit. "Maddie, help me get some warm water." While Maddie dashed off, Ethan examined the wounds. Some were fresh, as if from a recent fight. Others were older. Someone had tried to patch the worst one, an old bullet graze hastily sewn near the shoulder. There was a faint smell of antiseptic, mixed with earth and fear. As Ethan worked, he saw the dog's collar was also tangled with a dirty scrap of cloth, knotted tight. Gingerly, he loosened it. The fabric was soaked in dried blood, and on the inside, stitched in red, was a single name: Rebecca. Ethan stared, his chest tightening. The little scrap wasn't just a clue, it was a message. Shadow had made his way through the storm to find Ethan, carrying the last hope from his missing partner. Maddie returned, carefully carrying a steaming bowl of water. "Can I help?" Ethan nodded, watching his daughter's small hands as she gently dabbed at the dog's side. Shadow barely flinched. Instead, the dog licked Maddie's wrist, his tail thumping weakly. Maddie smiled, a rare light in her eyes. "He trusts us." Ethan gave the dog a slow, careful drink, then dug deeper in the matted fur, checking for other injuries. That's when his hand brushed something hard, a small black GPS tracker duct-taped behind the collar. "Someone wanted us to find him," Ethan muttered. The device blinked red, still active. He checked the data on his phone and saw a series of coordinates, the most recent one deep in the woods, right near the old hunting cabin north of town. A chill went through him, not just from the storm. He wrapped the dog in towels, then tucked a blanket around him, setting Shadow by the fire. The room filled with the faint smell of wet fur and wood smoke. Maddie sat close, holding the dog's big head in her lap. "He's safe now, Daddy." But Ethan knew safety was a fragile thing, especially in Aspen Ridge. "We'll call the vet first thing," he said quietly, more to himself than to Maddie. As the storm raged outside, Ethan knelt by the hearth, thinking of Rebecca's hard blue eyes, of every late-night patrol they'd ever shared. The old police radio on the table crackled, then died. The world felt very far away. Shadow drifted into a shallow sleep, his breathing ragged but steadier. Maddie traced the nameplate on his collar with her finger, whispering, "You're not alone, Shadow." And Ethan, listening to the wind and the beating of his own anxious heart, realized this was no ordinary rescue. Shadow had come back from the darkness with a purpose, a message, a warning, maybe even a miracle. Whatever waited out in the snow, Ethan would face it. But not alone, not tonight. Morning came heavy and gray, the storm finally spent, leaving the world outside the Walker house muffled and deep in white. The front steps were buried to the rails. Sunlight only touched the corners of the windows, and the trees groaned under thick new snow. Ethan Walker had not slept well. He had kept vigil by the hearth most of the night, watching Shadow's flanks rise and fall, listening to the slow ticking of the kitchen clock and Maddie's soft breaths from her room. Every hour, Ethan checked the collar, the matted fur, the healing wounds, each time feeling the silent pressure of Rebecca's name knotted in red thread and the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. Shadow's condition had stabilized by dawn, thanks to Ethan's careful work. But as the house warmed, the dog grew restless. Several times, Shadow nudged at the front door, whined at Ethan's boots, and circled the mat insistently. Every now and then, he would pause, nose pressed to the crack under the door, ears cocked, waiting for a signal only he could hear. Maddie, bleary-eyed and wrapped in her owl blanket, watched Shadow with concern. "He wants us to follow him, Daddy," she said. "He keeps looking at the woods." Ethan nodded, but caution held him back. "We'll wait for Dr. Marcus first." He texted the local veterinarian and friend, and within an hour, Marcus arrived, his pickup plowing a careful trench through the snow. Dr. Marcus Benton was a tall black man in his early 50s, with thick glasses and a deep, patient voice. He'd grown up in the South, fought through a difficult youth, and come to Aspen Ridge a decade ago for peace. His hands were broad and precise, the hands of someone who had stitched both farm animals and broken childhoods back together. Marcus wore a heavy green parka dusted with snow, muddy boots, and a wool cap pulled low over his ears. "Heard you've got a celebrity patient," Marcus grinned, setting down his battered bag. "And you look like you haven't slept in weeks, Ethan." "It's Shadow," Ethan said quietly. "Rebecca's dog." Marcus's demeanor sobered instantly. He crouched by the hearth, letting Shadow sniff his hands before gently examining the wounds. "He's been through hell." "This here," Marcus pointed to a patch of raw skin on Shadow's foreleg. "That's a ligature mark. Tied up tight, maybe with wire. Here too, around the neck, old bruising." He glanced at Ethan. "That's not wild animal damage. That's human." Marcus continued his exam, tracing every old scar and new injury. He found a patch of sticky residue near the dog's shoulder, sniffed it, and frowned. "Chemical. Maybe a sedative or tranquilizer, hard to say. See how the hair sticks up? Someone tried to drug him, then cut him loose, or he escaped." Shadow endured the examination in stoic silence, only flinching at the most tender spots, eyes fixed on Ethan the whole time. Maddie brought a bowl of water and a slice of bread. Shadow accepted the water but barely sniffed the food. Marcus administered a painkiller and some antibiotic ointment. He sat back on his heels, sighing. "I've seen a lot of things, but not many dogs find their way home in this shape." Ethan explained the GPS device, the bloodied cloth, and the name embroidered inside. Marcus listened in silence, then patted Shadow's head gently. "There's more to this dog than most men I know." While Marcus finished treating Shadow, there was a knock at the back door. Maddie peeked out, then let in Liam Porter, their nearest neighbor. Liam was a wiry man in his early 30s, ginger hair always wild, cheeks windburned from years working outdoors. He was a local carpenter, known for his quick wit, gentle manner, and a limp from a logging accident in his teens. Liam always carried a camera for wildlife photography, a hobby turned habit during long winters. He took off his snow-crusted gloves, offering a sympathetic grin. "You folks all right?" "Snow's still coming down heavy on the ridge. Figured you'd need a hand digging out." He looked at Shadow, recognition flickering in his green eyes. "Is that—" "Yeah," Ethan said, his voice taut. "Rebecca's." Liam's gaze darkened. "Heard anything?" Ethan shook his head. "Just him. But look." He explained the GPS, the clues, and the events of the night before. Liam's eyes widened and he pulled out his phone. "I almost forgot. I left my wildlife cam up last night by the property line. Caught a lot of deer." He scrolled, then paused. "But look at this." On the phone, a grainy video played. In the swirl of snow, a human figure, face obscured by a hood and thick parka, trudged through the woods, dragging Shadow behind on a rope. The timestamp was late last night. But hours later, the same camera showed Shadow, alone, limping toward Ethan's house. Somehow escaped, free but badly hurt. Ethan watched in silent rage, his fists clenching. "Who would do this?" Liam shook his head. "Can't tell from the video, but they went north toward the old mine road." Marcus stood, dusting off his hands. "Might be time to check that GPS again, Ethan." Ethan agreed. He fetched his phone, connected to the GPS device, and found the last pings mapped out. First the edge of the woods, then a meandering path north, finally stopping near a cluster of old cabins by the creek, the abandoned hunting lodge half the town's kids called haunted. "That's the place," Ethan said grimly. "If Rebecca's alive or anyone is, they'll be there." Marcus packed up, promising to return later with more supplies. "Don't take any risks, Ethan. Call for backup if you can, and keep that dog close." Maddie hovered by Shadow, petting his ears, sensing the tension. "Daddy, will you find Officer Lane?" Ethan hesitated, glancing at her small, determined face. "We'll do everything we can, Maddie." "But it might be dangerous," Liam said. "I'll help. My truck's got chains. If we need to go, I'm ready." Before Marcus left, he stooped to retrieve something from his boot. "Nearly forgot. Found this on my way in, right by the tree line." He handed Ethan a small metal object, a polished brass button, stamped with the insignia of the Aspen Ridge Police Department. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "That's standard issue, Ethan. Only cops have those." Ethan felt a jolt. "You think?" Marcus shrugged. "Could be nothing. Could mean someone from our own force is involved." The realization settled over the group like a new layer of snow, heavy, cold, dangerous. Ethan pocketed the button, his mind spinning with suspicion. The rest of the day passed in uneasy waiting. Ethan fielded calls from the sheriff's office. Still no word from Rebecca, and the main roads were closed for plowing. He cleaned his service pistol and checked the radio repeatedly, though the signal crackled and faded in the storm. Maddie spent her time quietly, drawing shadow in the woods, her childish optimism a stark contrast to her father's dread. As dusk approached, Shadow grew more insistent, whining at the door, barking softly, eyes never leaving the window. Ethan knew the message. It was time to go. He bundled Maddie in layers, checked his weapon, and texted Marcus for an update. With Liam's help, he dug out the truck, packed a thermos, and loaded Shadow into the back seat. Liam brought along his camera, a heavy flashlight, and a battered axe just in case. The drive was slow and treacherous, the road a tunnel of white, but Shadow sat upright, nose pressed to the glass, guiding them with every tense muscle. They reached the fork where the GPS signal had died. In the last light, Ethan saw the outline of the abandoned lodge, hunched and silent in the snowy dusk. He parked the truck and turned to Maddie. "You stay here, sweetheart." "Lock the doors." Maddie's voice trembled but was steady. "Be careful, Daddy." Ethan and Liam stepped out, snow crunching under their boots, Shadow straining at his leash, ready, alert, and unafraid. The secrets of the past were waiting, somewhere just beyond the trees. The forest outside Aspen Ridge was transformed into a cathedral of snow, the trees bowing under white burdens and the ground lost beneath a pristine blanket. In this silence, every footstep seemed impossibly loud, every breath a pale ghost in the frigid air. Ethan Walker moved cautiously along a narrow trail, Maddie close behind him in her puffy blue jacket and oversized knit hat, her small boots crunching in his tracks. At his side, Shadow padded with determined purpose, nose low to the ground, tail held rigid, his whole body attuned to scents and sounds invisible to the humans. Liam followed, camera slung across his chest and a battered axe strapped to his backpack, his limp more pronounced in the deep snow, but his eyes bright with concern and excitement. Ethan glanced back to reassure Maddie, seeing her pale cheeks flushed with cold and anxiety. "Stay close, sweetheart. If you get tired, tell me." Maddie nodded, clutching her father's gloved hand and casting nervous glances at the deep woods pressing in from either side. "Shadow knows where he's going, right?" she whispered. "He's the best tracker there is," Ethan replied, voice quiet but confident. They passed the point where the truck could go no further, just rutted tire tracks already disappearing beneath new snow. The forest here was denser, older. Sunlight, when it could break through the clouds, came in blue shafts, painting silver coins on the ground. The air smelled of pine, old earth, and something sharp fear, or anticipation. Shadow suddenly paused by a massive wind-sculpted pine. He sniffed intently, then let out a sharp bark, pawing at the rough bark. Ethan knelt to investigate, finding a streak of blood smeared on the trunk, dark and half-frozen. He pulled a glove off to examine it. "It's fresh," he murmured. "Maybe from last night." Maddie, curious but cautious, moved closer. At the base of the tree, half buried in the snow, she spotted something red and woolly. "Daddy, look!" She tugged out a small scarf hand-knit, with a simple pattern, and at one corner, a single letter worked in blue thread. R. Ethan's throat tightened, Rebecca's scarf. They moved on, Shadow growing more anxious. He darted ahead, pausing to bark at a tangle of branches where the snow had collapsed inward, forming a shallow pit. Ethan recognized the signs immediately, a hunting trap, expertly disguised. "Careful," he warned, but Maddie, distracted by a blue jay's sudden flit overhead, stepped sideways and vanished with a yelp. The snow muffled her fall, but not her frightened cry. Ethan dropped to his knees, frantically scraping at the edge of the pit. Shadow had already launched himself down after Maddie, landing with a thud and immediately pressing against the girl's side, licking her face, tail wagging in frantic reassurance. Maddie clung to the dog, trying to stop her tears. "Hold on, baby," Ethan called, finding a fallen branch for leverage. With Liam's help, he lowered it into the pit and reached for Maddie. She wrapped one arm around the branch and the other around Shadow's neck. Ethan and Liam, straining, managed to haul both girl and dog back up onto the snowy ground. Maddie was shaken but unhurt. Her thick clothes and the snow itself had cushioned her fall. Ethan hugged her tightly. "You're all right. You're safe. Good girl, Shadow." Shadow barked softly, still pressed close to Maddie, refusing to move away until she stood and wiped her eyes. Ethan peered into the pit. It was deep and narrow, lined with sharpened sticks and scattered bait, an illegal hunting trap meant for wolves or coyotes. "Someone set this recently," he muttered, anger growing. "This isn't some old trap from the trapper's days." "This is fresh," Liam knelt, snapping photos of the pit, the blood on the pine, the scarf, careful not to disturb anything. "We should report this," he said, voice tense. "If there's a poacher out here—" Shadow, ever vigilant, had moved a few yards away, nose twitching in the snow. He began to dig furiously under a clump of dead leaves at the base of a rotting stump. Ethan hurried over, pulling Maddie close, and watched as the dog uncovered a mud-caked object, a small black handgun. The weapon was slick with old blood, the serial number barely visible. Ethan's breath caught in his chest. He recognized the make, standard issue for the Aspen Ridge PD. On the grip, barely scratched, was a single initial, R. Rebecca's sidearm. Ethan wrapped the gun in a handkerchief, careful not to smudge any prints. "This just keeps getting worse," he muttered, staring at the weapon. Maddie stood quietly at his side, her face pale but her eyes fierce. "Daddy, does this mean Officer Lane is here? Or she's hurt?" Ethan shook his head, not trusting his voice. As he examined the gun, Maddie stiffened, pointing into the trees. "Dad, look!" Far off, nearly hidden by shifting snow and branches, a figure moved tall, bundled in a long brown coat, the face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. The person lingered just a moment, then disappeared deeper into the woods. Shadow growled low in his throat, hackles rising, body tense, and ready to defend. Liam snapped off a quick photo but caught only a blur. "We're not alone," he whispered. "Whoever set that trap might be watching us." Ethan weighed their options, heart pounding. They had evidence, a scarf, a bloody gun, a trap, but the presence of an unknown watcher was too great a risk. "We're heading back." "Now, move, Maddie." Maddie obeyed without protest, clinging to Shadow's fur as they retraced their path. Liam brought up the rear, eyes scanning the woods, camera ready. Just as they neared the road, Ethan bent to pick up a spent shell casing gleaming on the snow. He recognized the police issue markings immediately. This wasn't just a random hunter's bullet. This was evidence from the department's own missing cache, gone for 2 years. "We'll need this," he said grimly, pocketing the casing. As the sun slipped behind heavy clouds and the forest faded to blue shadow, the group reached the truck. Maddie climbed inside, silent but brave, clutching Rebecca's scarf and stroking Shadow's head. Liam helped Ethan stow the evidence and checked the truck's locks. The forest seemed to close behind them, the hush broken only by Shadow's soft whine. Ethan drove home slowly, mind racing, senses prickling with unease. Someone in Aspen Ridge was hiding a secret in the snow. He would not rest until the truth was found. Night came quickly to Aspen Ridge, the snow erasing what little sunset there was. The forest pressed dark and cold against the edge of town. Ethan Walker drove home in silence, his mind racing through what they'd found. Rebecca's bloodied scarf, her sidearm buried beneath a stump, a spent police casing in the snow, and, somewhere beyond the pines, a watcher whose presence chilled him more than the mountain wind. Maddie dozed in the back seat, her cheeks smudged and pale, Rebecca's scarf wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Shadow, wedged between her and the window, kept his head up, alert even as exhaustion tugged at him. Liam, riding shotgun, broke the silence as they reached the Walker house. "I'll stay tonight, if you don't mind. Just in case." He smiled with effort, but the fear in his green eyes was obvious. "If they're watching, we shouldn't be alone." Ethan nodded his thanks. As they unpacked, the town's winter hush pressed in, broken only by the moan of the wind and distant crackle of a snowplow. They kept the evidence scarf, gun, shell casing in a locked metal box on the kitchen table. Maddie made cocoa for everyone, her hands shaking a little as she poured, but she tried to act brave. "I'm okay, Daddy," she said, her voice thin. "Shadow kept me safe." Ethan ruffled her hair, pride and worry tangled together. "You're tougher than you know, Maddie." Liam stoked the fire, keeping his battered camera close. "I set my game camera outside by the fence," he said. "If anyone comes near, we'll see them." The house settled into uneasy quiet. The old wall clock ticked, marking the slow march toward midnight. Maddie fell asleep on the couch, Shadow curled protectively beside her. Liam nodded off in the armchair, one booted foot twitching as he dreamed. Ethan cleaned the gun they'd found, hands working by habit. His phone vibrated once, then again, louder, more insistent. The number was blocked. He stared at it for a long moment, then answered. Static, then a voice hoarse, low and distinctly male. If you want Rebecca to live, do as I say. Ethan's mouth went dry. Who is this? What do you want? The voice hissed, words clipped by wind. Bring the dog. Leave him at the hunting cabin North Ridge before sunrise, alone. If you call for help, you'll never see your partner again. The line went dead. Ethan's hand shook. He replayed the message, trying to catch any detail, a cough, an accent, a background noise. But there was nothing, only cold malice and a sense of calculated control. He scrolled through his phone contacts, finger hovering over the sheriff's number. If he called for help and the kidnapper was watching, Rebecca might die. But if he did nothing... You okay? Liam had woken, sensing the tension. Ethan relayed the call, voice rough. He wants Shadow. Tonight. If we don't do it, we lose Rebecca. Liam's jaw clenched. It's a trap. You know that. Of course it is. But we don't have a choice. In the kitchen, Maddie stirred, sitting up, eyes wide and scared. Are you going to give Shadow away? No, honey, Ethan said, trying to sound confident. But we have to be smart. He went outside to check the camera Liam had set by the fence. The snow was falling again, thick flakes spinning under the porch light. He watched the footage on the tiny LCD, nothing but drifting snow, the occasional rabbit, the restless wind. No sign of an intruder. Back inside, he loaded his pistol, then sat at the kitchen table, staring at the metal evidence box. He could wait for backup, risk Rebecca's life, or follow the orders and walk into the unknown. A hard, bitter choice. His thoughts were interrupted by a call from Emily Harris, the town's diner owner. Emily was a woman in her late 50s, sturdy and quick-witted, always wearing a bright red scarf. Her hair was silver, usually pulled into a bun, and her smile was legendary, but tonight her voice was taut with unease. Ethan, just a heads up. Some stranger came in about an hour ago, big guy, army jacket, scruffy beard, didn't say much. Bought enough groceries for a week and asked where the old cabins were. Had a gun strapped to his belt, didn't bother to hide it. He left headed north, out past Mill Road. Thanks, Emily. Did you get a plate number? Nope, he was on foot. But he had that look, dangerous, desperate. I called because he made me nervous and you told me to report anything strange. You did good. Stay safe, Emily. Ethan hung up, turning the information over in his mind. The stranger, armed, prepared, headed toward the cabins. It all pointed to the same place. The hunting lodge, deep in the woods, the GPS coordinates from Shadow's collar, the threats. Maddie hovered at the kitchen door, holding her stuffed rabbit, her blue eyes huge. Daddy, don't go alone. Oh. I won't, Ethan promised, but I need you to be brave for me. And for Shadow. She hugged the dog fiercely. Don't let him go. Liam checked the locks, then double-checked. I'll keep watch. Whoever that was, he won't get in here without a fight. But as the hours dragged toward dawn, exhaustion claimed them all. Sometime after 3, Ethan jolted awake on the couch. He'd meant to rest just a moment, but the house was too quiet. Maddie and Shadow were gone from the couch. Panic flared. He rushed from room to room. Maddie was in her bed, fast asleep, but Shadow was missing. The back door stood open a crack, letting in a freezing gust. Outside, fresh snow was churned by tire tracks. Liam, groggy, joined him on the porch. What's wrong? Shadow's gone. Someone took him. They followed the tracks to the end of the driveway where headlights had seared a path through the night, then vanished up the ridge road. Ethan ran back inside to check Liam's camera. On the screen, grainy footage showed a tall figure in a hooded jacket coaxing Shadow with a piece of jerky, then quickly slipping a loop over the dog's head and leading him to a waiting truck. The tailgate slammed, the engine revved, and the vehicle disappeared into the dark. Damn it, Ethan cursed softly. They wanted him, and they got him. The sun was just starting to rise, throwing pink light over the snow. Ethan stood in the kitchen, Maddie clutching his arm, Liam at his side. The phone call, the armed stranger, the missing dog, everything pointed toward a confrontation in the woods, and a rescue attempt more desperate than any he'd faced before. By dawn, Aspen Ridge was frozen and pale, the sky overcast and unyielding. Ethan Walker awoke after only an hour's restless sleep, face drawn and stubbled. his blue eyes ringed with fatigue. Maddie, bundled in her thick winter coat, sat beside him at the kitchen table, clutching a thermos of cocoa but barely touching it. Fear had settled into her, a quiet heaviness that even Shadow's absence could not break. Liam Porter paced near the window, his wild ginger hair pressed flat by his wool cap, sharp green eyes constantly darting to the snowy street outside. A knock at the door startled them. Ethan answered to find Jaden Moore, a young officer from Ethan's own department, standing awkwardly on the porch. Jaden was tall and rangy, no more than 28, with a boyish face, a jaw dotted with old acne scars, and black hair cut close to his scalp. His uniform looked too new for the job, his badge barely dulled. Jaden was known for his eager questions and quiet loyalty, but the shadow of something nervous lingered behind his eyes like a man used to being overlooked. "I heard about what happened," he said, his voice clipped but sincere. "You need help. I'm here. Sheriff can't spare anyone else. Roads are still bad, but I brought chains and extra ammo." Ethan hesitated, studying Jaden's face for any hint of deceit, but the younger man only shifted from foot to foot, holding a snow-caked duffel. Maddie, wary but polite, offered Jaden a quick smile. "Thanks for coming." Together, the four of them loaded into Ethan's truck. The GPS tracker, still active, pinged from Shadow's collar, sending them along treacherous, unplowed roads. Maddie rode up front, her small fists balled in her lap, face pressed against the glass. Liam sat in back, flycam and camera beside him, boots muddy and cold. Jaden tried to make conversation, awkward, nervous, offering small reassurances about his marksmanship, about the K-9 unit's old glory days. Ethan only nodded, every muscle taut with dread. The drive grew tense as the GPS led them to the edge of a remote logging road. There, set back among a copse of frozen aspens, sat the old hunting cabin, a squat structure of blackened logs, window shutters bolted, padlocks glinting in the weak light. Tire tracks scored the icy ground, but otherwise all was silent. Liam, alert, launched his flycam, sending it whirring silently above the roofline. Ethan signaled for quiet, then circled the cabin, gun drawn, Maddie and Jaden close behind. The padlock on the main door was battered but holding. Ethan tested it, then motioned to Jaden. "Watch my back." With a sharp crack from his crowbar, the lock snapped, the door swinging open with a groan. The inside was freezing and dark, air thick with the smell of damp wood and sweat. In the corner, behind a rickety table, lay Shadow, his fur filthy, flanks heaving, a new scratch bleeding along his ear. He thumped his tail at Ethan's approach, whining softly, struggling to rise. Ethan dropped to his knees, relief and rage battling in his chest. "Good boy, Shadow." "I'm here." Just beyond, bound to an old iron cot, was a woman tall, her coat matted with blood, blindfolded with a dirty scarf. Rebecca Lane. Even battered, she retained her force. Broad shoulders, square jaw, a mane of tangled black hair shot through with gray. Her skin was ashen, lips chapped, one cheek bruised darkly. Rebecca had always been a storm, brash, sarcastic, fiercely loyal. Her laugh could cut glass, but she was the first to defend a rookie or scold a bully. The years and the job had left their mark, losses, betrayals, sleepless nights, but she was stubbornly alive. Ethan hurried to untie her, careful of her swollen wrists. Maddie hovered close, eyes shining with tears. "Officer Lane?" Rebecca's voice was rough but steady. "Hey, kid." "That you, Ethan?" She removed her own blindfold, blinking against the sudden light. "You found me. Wasn't sure anyone would." Shadow pressed his head to Rebecca's knee, whimpering. She smiled weakly, ruffling his ears. "You did good, boy." Jaden stood back, gun raised, scanning the shadows. "We have to move." They could be coming back. Rebecca fixed him with a long look, then said quietly, "You shouldn't trust everyone you work with, Ethan." "Not after what I've learned." Ethan frowned, but before he could answer, Liam's voice came crackling through the walkie. "There's a door under the floorboard's hidden hatch near the stove. I just caught someone running out back." "You've got company." Liam, ever cautious, had kept his distance, using the flycam's thermal lens to spot heat signatures beneath the floor. The hatch was old, cleverly disguised, and led to a dark tunnel vanishing beneath the snow toward the old mill. Ethan knelt to lift the boards, finding the door. "Jaden, help me." He turned, but Jaden's gun was already pointed at him, hands shaking. Jaden's face was pale, eyes darting. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I had to. He said he'd kill my brother if I didn't help. I just wanted this over." For a moment, the room was silent. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. Shadow growled low and menacing. Jaden lowered the gun a fraction. "Dylan's waiting at the old mill. He's got everything set up. He said if I didn't get the dog here, he'd hurt my family." Tears welled at the corners of his eyes. "I didn't want any of this." Ethan moved slowly, hands raised. "We can help your brother, Jaden, but you have to let us stop Dylan. He's gone too far." Jaden hesitated, torn between fear and hope. At last he dropped the gun, voice breaking. "I'll show you the tunnel. We have to go now." Liam, having landed his flycam on the roof, hurried back, breathless and red-cheeked, reporting that the thermal lens showed movement more than one person at the mill. Maddie hugged Shadow, whispering reassurance as Rebecca limped to her feet, refusing Ethan's help. "I can walk. Let's end this." Together, they crept down the hatch into the frozen dark. The tunnel was narrow, the air stinging with old dust and secrets, every step drawing them closer to the truth hidden beneath Aspen Ridge. The entrance to the hidden tunnel yawned open beneath the hunting cabin, its mouth dark and cold, reeking of old earth and secrets. The beam from Liam's flashlight danced along mossy brick and rusted pipes. Ethan moved first, gun ready, muscles coiled with a tension that came from years of facing down things more dangerous than the weather. Shadow padded ahead, his head low, every muscle trembling with silent warning. The dog's black and tan coat glimmered in the narrow beam, a faint scar visible on his right flank. Maddie, clinging to Rebecca's side, shivered in her woolen coat but pressed forward bravely, her hand locked tight around Shadow's tail. Rebecca limped but kept up, gritting her teeth against pain. Her tall, broad-shouldered frame looked smaller in the claustrophobic tunnel. Her tangled dark hair scraped back, revealing the worry lines that sleepless years and loss had etched deep. Jaden followed, face ghostly in the blue light, his badge glinting over a wrinkled uniform. He kept his gaze lowered, guilt and shame making him older than his years. Liam trailed last, camera in one hand, axe in the other, breath fogging in the stale air. The tunnel sloped downward, twisting through the old mountain bedrock. Every few feet, the group paused at Shadow's warning, a footprint here, a smear of oil there, a faint chemical tang that made their eyes water and throats burn. "That's chloroform," Rebecca murmured, voice low and bitter. "We used it in the academy. Somebody's been drugging people down here." Shadow's hackles rose. He led them into a wider stone chamber, walls lined with dust-choked shelves. Broken boxes littered the floor, old uniforms, police files, an abandoned cot. Liam lifted his camera, snapping quick shots. "Whoever used this place was here recently," he whispered. "Look, footprints, cigarette butts." Ethan picked up a badge, old and battered, the name scratched off. "This is a cop's badge. Maybe someone who disappeared." Jaden fidgeted, a sheen of sweat on his brow. "He said he'd take my brother if I told. I didn't know it would go this far." A loud clatter echoed from up ahead. Rebecca, always the fighter, limped ahead, determined to prove her injuries couldn't slow her down. Suddenly her boot slipped on a patch of oil and she tumbled forward, crashing through a rotten wooden door at the side of the chamber. "Rebecca!" Ethan rushed after her, Shadow barking and trying to leap down the broken stairs. Rebecca landed in a pitch-black room, the smell of mold and metal thick in the air. Her hands fumbled for her flashlight, the beam catching on a wall of photographs' faded faces, some smiling, some terrified, pinned like trophies. She staggered, breath coming in short bursts, as she saw her own photo from the department's records, a date written in red beneath. Then another. Maddie, much younger, bundled in a bright red coat. Ethan arrived just behind her, heart in his throat. "What is it?" She pointed wordlessly, shining her light across dozens of files missing persons, all from Aspen Ridge, some names crossed out, others with addresses and dates. "He's been collecting us," she whispered, "watching for years." Liam found a desk in the corner, drawers stuffed with more folders, journals, and maps of the town. Jaden picked up one sheet, reading aloud. Surveillance walker home, diner, school bus route. His voice trailed off. He was after Maddie. Maybe more kids, too. Maddie, hearing her name, clung to Shadow. The dog pressed against her, growling as another sound echoed down the tunnel. A dragging step, a metallic clang, the approach of someone heavy and determined. Rebecca straightened, eyes blazing. "We end it here, Ethan." "We have to." Ethan nodded, anger and dread burning together. "We will. But we protect Maddie first." They herded Maddie and Shadow to the back of the room, taking up positions behind an overturned desk. Liam lifted his axe. Jaden steadied his pistol, mouth tight, knuckles white. The footsteps grew louder. Rebecca gripped Ethan's shoulder. "Remember, he's smart." And desperate. Suddenly, Ethan's phone buzzed, barely a bar of signal, but enough for a garbled message from Marcus Benton, the veterinarian. The text appeared on Ethan's screen. "Found another German Shepherd. Badly hurt, not Shadow. Drugged, left near creek. Who is this?" Ethan's heart hammered. Was there a second Shadow? A decoy? Or another victim in this maze of lies? "Marcus found another dog," Ethan whispered to Rebecca. "Someone's trying to confuse us." Rebecca shook her head. "No, someone's trying to make us believe we're everywhere and nowhere at once." As the footsteps stopped outside, Ethan pressed Maddie close, gun raised, determined to defend what mattered most. Shadow, sensing the danger, bristled, teeth bared, ready for whatever waited on the other side. The secrets of Aspen Ridge were laid bare in the cold electric light years of vanished friends, bent cops, and the broken lives left in their wake. But in the darkness, Ethan vowed, they would not be taken quietly. In the suffocating dark of the tunnel, every footstep sounded like thunder. Ethan led the group forward, his face streaked with sweat and grime, jaw locked with determination. Rebecca, wounded but unbowed, leaned on the wall for balance. Shadow, battered and breathing hard, pressed close to Maddie's leg. The only light came from Liam's flashlight and the dim green glow of Jaden's watch. The tunnel ended at a heavy metal door. Beyond it, voices echoed, one deep and mocking, the other panicked, high-pitched, a child's. Dylan Brooks waited for them. He was a broad, heavy-set man in his early 40s, with pale, greasy skin and thinning blonde hair tied back in a ragged ponytail. His eyes were flat gray, his hands meaty and twitchy on the grip of a pistol. Dylan wore a battered hunting jacket, stained and reeking of sweat, and his breath rasped with the rattle of old cigarettes. He had a smile that didn't reach his eyes, the smile of a man who enjoyed seeing others afraid. At Dylan's side, Maddie stood trembling, her arms pinned behind her back with a filthy rope. Her blue eyes were wide with terror, cheeks streaked with tears. Shadow snarled at the sight of her, and Rebecca's rage boiled over. "Let her go, Dylan!" "It's me you want," Dylan laughed, his voice bouncing off the concrete. "Oh, I want all of you. You never figured it out, did you, Ethan? You thought you were smarter than the mountain. No one is." He waved the pistol, motioning the group forward. "Drop your guns." Now Ethan exchanged glances with Rebecca, then nodded. Slowly, he and Jaden set their weapons down. Liam, hands shaking, slipped his axe behind a crate. "You're not getting away with this," Ethan growled. "It's over, Dylan." The state police are on their way. Dylan's laughter echoed again. "I don't care. They'll never make it in time." He shoved Maddie forward, placing himself between her and the group. One more step, and she dies. Jaden's hands balled into fists, sweat gleaming on his forehead. "You don't have to do this, Dylan," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "You got what you wanted." Dylan shot him a look full of venom. "Shut up, traitor. You think I care about your brother now? You're nothing but a tool." Jaden flinched, guilt and anger warring on his face. Suddenly, Shadow lunged, throwing his battered body between Maddie and Dylan. The shot rang out, echoing like thunder. Shadow yelped, the bullet grazing his side, leaving a bloody track through his fur. Maddie screamed. Rebecca hurled herself forward, catching Dylan off guard. The struggle was violent and brief. Rebecca clawed at Dylan's eyes, but he smashed her aside with the pistol grip. Jaden, seeing his chance, dove for the dropped pistol. For a moment, he hesitated. Memories of his brother, of Dylan's threats, but then he aimed, voice shaking but clear. "Drop it, Dylan. Let her go." Dylan spun, gun raised at Jaden. "You little—" The second shot cracked the air. Jaden's bullet caught Dylan in the shoulder, spinning him backward. Ethan and Liam rushed forward. Liam swung his axe, knocking the gun from Dylan's hand, while Ethan tackled the big man, pinning him to the filthy concrete. Rebecca grabbed Maddie, pulling her to safety. Shadow limped to their side, tail wagging weakly. Blood stained his side, but his eyes were bright, determined. "He saved me," Maddie sobbed, cradling Shadow's head. "He saved me again." As chaos raged, an explosion boomed from the far end of the factory. A stray bullet had ignited a leaking gas canister. Flames licked up the walls, black smoke rolling across the ceiling. The heat was suffocating, painting everything in a hellish orange light. Sprinklers hissed, but the fire spread fast, roaring through broken windows and up rotten beams. Ethan dragged the wounded Dylan toward the exit, shouting for the others to follow. Liam scooped up his axe and the camera, while Jaden staggered beside Rebecca and Maddie. They hurried through the maze of corridors, the fire a living thing at their backs. At the main entrance, blue and red lights flashed through the smoke. Trooper Alvarez, a tall, broad-shouldered state policewoman with dark brown skin, tightly braided hair, and a booming voice stormed in, flanked by firefighters in heavy gear. "Get down! Hands where we can see them!" she barked. Liam waved his arms, coughing from the smoke. "We're the good guys. Kidnapper's with us. He's hurt." Firefighters rushed forward, dragging hoses, axes gleaming. Two of them, a small, wiry man named Chet with a handlebar mustache, and a young woman, Hannah, with freckles and a red helmet, helped pull Rebecca and Maddie to safety. Outside, Ethan watched the factory roof collapse into flames as paramedics loaded Shadow onto a stretcher. Maddie refused to leave his side, her face streaked with soot and tears. Jaden sat on the curb, head in his hands, shaking as Trooper Alvarez questioned him. Dylan, cuffed and bleeding, was hauled into a waiting cruiser, his expression twisted with hatred and defeat. Rebecca limped to Ethan's side. "We did it," she whispered, voice hoarse but proud. "No more secrets." Above the sirens and the roar of fire, the first snowflakes of a new storm began to fall, coating the devastation in silent white. In the gentle aftershock of the fire, the world in Aspen Ridge slowed, as if the mountains themselves were finally exhaling. The snowstorm that had blanketed the ruined factory faded into blue spring skies, the air crisp and clear, sunlight gilding every tree branch. At the small county animal clinic, a slant-roofed building painted cheerful yellow, Ethan stood at the window, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, gaze fixed anxiously on the closed operating room door. His hair was even more peppered with gray after these harrowing days, his face drawn but finally at peace. Beside him, Maddie clung to his arm, her other hand twisting the ear of her battered stuffed rabbit. Her eyes, always a little too old for her years, now sparkled with hope. She wore a red scarf that once belonged to Rebecca, now her most precious possession. The room was full of family, though none by blood. Rebecca Lane, bruises faded, hair neatly braided, walked with a cane but held herself tall. Her posture was always upright, shoulders set with unspoken defiance, but now she laughed easier, her voice softer. There was a warmth in her eyes as she watched Maddie and Ethan, something gentle that hadn't been there before. Jaden Moore, no longer in uniform but in an old flannel shirt and jeans, hovered quietly near the door. His features had lost the tension of guilt, replaced with the relief of forgiveness and a shy eagerness to be useful. He had always been an outsider, his own parents lost to addiction, his brother safe now thanks to Ethan's intervention. Liam, arm in a sling, propped himself in a chair, documenting everything with a fresh roll of film for his old camera. He was a little thinner, a little more careful, but his dry humor hadn't dimmed. Marcus Benton, the town veterinarian, emerged at last. He wore his usual green scrubs and a smile as wide as the valley. "He's a stubborn one, your Shadow," Marcus announced, voice deep and steady. "Took more stitches than I care to count, but he'll make it. You can see him now, gently." Maddie darted inside first, and Shadow lifted his great head, bandaged but alert, his tail thumping slowly. The old German shepherd looked older now, fur silvered and eyes wise with pain, but when Maddie leaned in to hug him, he licked her cheek, and the whole room seemed to brighten. Rebecca knelt beside them, scratching behind Shadow's ears. "Thank you, partner. We're safe now, thanks to you." Ethan rested his hand on Shadow's back, meeting the dog's amber gaze with a look of pure gratitude. "Your family, Shadow. Always." In the following days, Aspen Ridge pulsed with new energy. The news broke quickly. The collapse of the abandoned mill had exposed a cache of documents, maps, and hard drives, enough to unravel not just Dylan's crimes, but the shadowy reach of a mining corporation that had bribed local officials, orchestrated disappearances, and used thugs like Dylan to silence whistleblowers. The state police moved fast, and the name Hope Ridge appeared in headlines across Colorado as a rallying cry for the town's renewal. Ethan testified at the state inquiry, his honest, measured words swaying not just the authorities but also the community that had once blamed him for not solving Rebecca's disappearance sooner. Rebecca herself became a voice for the missing, working with local social workers and schools to rebuild trust. Liam contributed his photos and footage to a documentary, bringing the story to a national audience. Jaden, after much soul-searching, chose to stay in Aspen Ridge. Ethan, seeing in the young man a chance for redemption, offered him a home. "Family isn't what you're born with, Jaden," Ethan told him, clapping him on the shoulder. "It's what you choose to build." Rebecca, who had never married, quietly adopted Maddie, vowing to never let the girl feel alone again. The new family, Ethan, Rebecca, Maddie, Jaden, and Shadow, settled into the rhythm of a life reclaimed from violence. The townsfolk, inspired by the courage of those who survived, came together in ways that surprised even themselves. They founded the Hope Ridge Trust, a nonprofit dedicated to preserving the forests, protecting local children, and providing rescue training for both people and dogs. Shadow, now a local legend, became the mascot of their campaign. Children in red scarves and old-timers with hunting caps joined in marches to the old mill, planting wildflowers and hanging birdhouses to reclaim what darkness had nearly taken away. As winter faded into spring, the town held its first festival in years. The green meadows above Aspen Ridge burst into bloom, and families gathered for music and food beneath bunting hung from ancient pines. Ethan, for the first time in years, found himself laughing openly. Rebecca, cane forgotten for the day, danced a slow circle with Maddie and Jaden. Shadow, stitches out and moving with only a slight limp, chased butterflies with the children, his bark a joyous echo through the valley. The past could not be erased, but in its place, something better had taken root, a community forged by hardship, redeemed by loyalty, and made whole by the courage of a dog who would not give up. As the sun set on Hope Ridge, Ethan stood at the edge of the meadow, watching his daughter and Shadow play in the tall grass, feeling the old ache of loss finally lift. He reached for Rebecca's hand and squeezed it, Jaden and Liam beside them, and for the first time he allowed himself to believe in happy endings. In the quiet after the storm, we're reminded that sometimes miracles arrive not in a blaze of glory, but on 4 muddy paws, with a heart full of loyalty and love. Shadow's journey, his courage, his resilience, his devotion, teaches us that even in our darkest valleys, there is always a hand reaching out, sometimes human, sometimes divine. For those with the faith to keep hoping, for those who refuse to give up, God can send help in the most unexpected forms. This story is about more than crime and rescue. It's about redemption, second chances, and the healing power of community. It's about learning to trust again, about letting love find its way back into broken places, and about believing that, with God's grace, no soul is ever truly lost. If Shadow in this small town could rise again after so much pain, then so can we in our daily lives, if only we keep believing. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in everyday miracles, in the goodness that still lives in this world, I invite you to share this video with a friend, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Let's fill the world with hope, one story at a time. And if you wish God's blessing not just for Shadow and his family, but for all those still searching for a miracle, type Amen in the comments. May the Lord watch over you and your loved ones, and may you always find faith, love, and second chances on your own journey.